later. So I should just yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Get on the right sprint. So for Sprint 4, our main stories were preparing for the poster fair so that we could learn to talk about our research questions and our contributions, and also maybe talk to people about user needs and get some outside opinions on the work we've been doing. Our second story was that we wanted to understand how scaffolding would work within the context of our two apps, Sunwalk and Zombies Interactive, and how those would affect user experience and data collection. And then we had some stories in order to support that last story, in which we want to scaffold in order to collect more varied types of data that extend beyond location. And some testing. Okay.
Sure, okay. So we spent quite a bit of time on the poster during this sprint. We went through quite a bit of iterations. Our first looking quite poor, and well, we developed over time. So we got feedback from DTR, SIG meetings, and so on and so forth. And our final results before the poster fair, which is going to be in a couple of hours now, is this. So we think we've managed to put up a poster that's relatively clear in delivery, but also quite easy to follow through. And we have our physical copy out here right now, although we can't quite show it due to the limitations of this recording. Otherwise, we've been working on some testing of the alternatives and whatnot that the alternative mechanics and the scaffolding mechanics that we've been developing over the last couple of weeks, mainly the last sprint. In terms of testing out the alternatives, Catherine and I we've been finding quite a bit of improvement, especially with Zombie Run, and we're still trying to tweak ZenWalks a slight bit, but we think that we might have something. The alternatives, it seems from testings, seem to provide users with very clear instructions on what they could do and could not do based upon the situation. And judging from the testing that we've done, especially over the last week, it seems that the users really seem to like having this very context-aware narrative driven by what they're doing, the various physical movements that they're displaying to give to the app their current state. So we went through with Zombie Run, for example, 10 users. This was testing done with both the alternatives, the new coordination validation interactions, plus the variation interactions. By variation, we mean we thought that through this mechanic of using alternatives, we could also perhaps now go into more detailed more detailed state information about the object. So for example, we tested on lamps first, and if we know the existence of lamps existing in a certain area, then we can afterwards not only coordinate users to the lamps and validate whether or not the lamp exists, but if we know that the lamp does exist, then we can perhaps also see whether or not, for example, there exists a poster posted on the lamp or not. So that went pretty well. In order to mitigate certain problems with coordination, for example, from our last sprint, it seemed that users sometimes might pass various objects. For example, they might pass the fire hydrant and they might not know which fire hydrant to go to. We tweaked some language a bit so that we now instruct users to only look for fire hydrants or lamps ahead of them. Plus, in the event, so especially for the coordination interactions, if the users happen to go past the original object of interest, we lock that as a new object instead of saying that we validated or invalidated the previous one, which we think would give more accuracy in data. So that was testing. Catherine went through a set of ZenWalk tests last week as well. If you have any of that up.
Yeah, it's down here somewhere. Yeah, from testing Zenwalk, it seems people are enjoying it a little bit more, and people actually enjoy looking at the trees. There's still some things that we would like to look at that we found from testing. For example, like one person just like didn't look at trees at all because she said she kind of just like took the instructions as like a suggestion, um, which might be something we wanted to like try to avoid happening, or we could just like design around it and treat that as like an edge case. Let's see. Some people for zombies interactive, when they didn't see the object, they ended up like pretending that other objects were those objects. So our instructions could maybe still be even more specific or clear. People wanted to look at different types of objects. They were a little bit bored of looking at just trees. And let's see. But yeah, our main finding was that like now that we were providing alternative instructions, users weren't confused or bothered really when they weren't able to see or get to an object. One thing we tried making the interactions more dynamic so that a user could look at a tree for as long as they wanted to and then move on. And one finding was that people tended not to take advantage of that. We didn't let them know that that was a feature. And so people in the back of their mind were like, oh, we need to move on before the audio moves on. So um, in the next round, we might play around with like telling people that the app is dynamic and that they can take their time where they want to. So
Right, and in a line with everything we've said so far, it seems that one slight unexpected problem that we are facing was people didn't quite understand the extent to which the app might be dynamic and might be context aware, which provided some confusion at the start of the experience. So that was slightly unexpected, but as they were going through the experience, lots of people, especially for the zombie run tests, they could better understand that the apps that we're providing were dynamic and they liked the experience overall. And we also did get some um, feedback on people wanting to rehear the instructions, especially for the runners, because they might be concentrating on something else, so they might be looking forward and the instructions might come up. In which case we're slightly toying with the idea of perhaps if just being aligned with all this being context aware, maybe we can perhaps replay the instructions if the user would stay in their position for a prolonged time, maybe a couple of seconds. And now we have the poster fair in the background, so please feel free